Good evening, friends. More precisely, Christopher's friends, and now my friends, students of CEPT. It's an honor for me to stand over here and talk about Christopher, the latest book, Great Expectations, Notes to an Architect, at a place where he set his foot for the first time in India. He very truly made Ahmedabad as his karma bhumi. Friends, let me tell you a story how this book was born, or let's say the book before this book was born, like our firstborn, which is called The Letters to Young Architects. It was in 2011. I was sitting in the office. I remember very clearly it was Sunday. And we both enjoy cleaning our desk quite a lot more than necessary, even though we have a very neat and clean house. But that's our pastime or hobby. And one of those cleaning sessions led us to a file which I used to diligently keep all his lecture notes, articles that he published in newspapers and books, and some of his scribbled notes, all of these things. I used to just very nicely, like a good secretary, I used to file them all until it became like a big box file. One day I was going through that and I saw like, wow, this reads so well. When you see each of these letters in isolation, you don't get a feel of that they make sense. But when it's all put together as a file, or if you imagine in your mind, could this be a book? Then there is a philosophy. So I thought that, like, Christopher, why don't we make a book out of this? So very aspirational as we both were, and we wrote to Penguin, then to Rupert, and to Orient Longman, all the English major publishing houses back then in 2011, to only get a rejection letter saying that this is a book which doesn't have any photographs. My dear, how are you going to sell architecture without photographs? Well, we thought like, what they say is right, and we didn't have any photographs to support, and we did not want to have photographs to support because we wanted it to be read as a philosophy, as a way of life, as his way of looking at architecture as a discipline. So then I told Christopher that why don't we self-publish it? In all humility, I went to Delhi, I went to the publishing the place where they issue these ISBN numbers. Back then you had to go, now you can do it online and all that. So we came back, published, printed with Pragati, and then we started selling like these kind of events that we hosted in various colleges. I would actually carry the books. I would sit with a swipe card machine, and then I would actually, really like a good salesman, I would tell people, please buy, प्यार के लिए कुछ भी करना पड़ता है. So that's how I did it. And then soon we found that this book has, instead of walking, it started flying. And no sooner this book was in the top 10 best-selling books for 18 weeks back in 2011. And then it was picked up by the Chinese government to be published in Chinese. It was translated into Chinese. Then it was translated by Dhankesh Ojha. He was if I'm not mistaken, he was an IAS officer in Gujarat cadre, and he published it translated into Gujarati. He published it into Gujarati. Then the Bangladesh government picked it up, and then it was published by the Bengal Foundation, and it was published into Bangla. And today it's simultaneously getting translated into Marathi, Hindi, Persian in Iran. Sometimes you may have to lose something to get more beautiful, as Christopher would put it. What was Penguin's loss was Christopher and Ram's gain. In fact, if I have to look at from the point of view of investment, this was our best investment. I think return on investment on this book was almost like 1800 times. So you can imagine. So that was the glorious journey of the first book, Letters to Young Architect. It put Christopher on the map as a person who's a thinker, a philosopher, and not just an architect and a planner. So he started wearing a new cap since that 2011. Now, when we come to talk about this particular book, The Great Expectations Notes to an Architect, again, the last 14 years of letters and articles and his talks, scribbled notes all put together, this time not by me. I had a young man assist me, Karan Gandhi, who recently graduated from your own college, school, as you say, CEPT, and then he came to Pune and he assisted Christopher in compiling the books, letters together from the file into a book. I was very busy, of course, with other activities of the running of the company. And I always say that Karan was God sent to us. He pushed Christopher despite his illness. And in the last 6 months, he made Christopher write this book, edit it. He helped him in editing it, putting it all together, worked with CEPT in bringing the book out, and made Bimal write the foreword to this book. So in a way, I think we were rushing up because we knew that time was not the right. The book was published. We lost him just 2 days before the book came into existence. But as I always say that Christopher is amongst us, even today, right here. Great Expectations Notes to an Architect, as one would say, is a sequel to the Letters to Young Architect. It is a chronicle of his journeys, life's journeys on the path to find the spirit of architecture. It is replete with anecdotes and experiences from his pursuit, spanning more than 50 years or half a century. Professor Benninger describes how he had the good luck. He very clearly believed that the best luck in anyone's life could be having great teachers, fantastic friends, good students, and the colleagues. He went out searching for some, and some found him in return. From them, he inherited a passion for architecture and the love for life. He always said that such gurus inspire him to find his true passion. He believed in meeting wise people and journeys that he has chartered unplanned. He visited strange places which revealed many patterns. These engagements with new contexts, new societies and technologies revealed to him the essential good in the mankind. There is a great universe within each one of us. This is what he always believed in. He always was fascinated by the story of Yashoda when she catches Balkrishna and then questions and asks him, "Have you eaten the mud?" And he opens the mouth, and then she finds the cosmos, the universe in the mouth, and then she realizes that what she was mothering was not a simple child, but that is a universe in boy Krishna. So he was very fascinated by this, and he attached this particular story from the Hindu mythology in everybody. He found that there is a universe of truth in each one of us, and the people that he kept meeting all through his life. He often said that if I was young as an architect, I would first design a structure called me, which is really great. I think if you think about it, instead of designing your buildings, first design yourself. What would be the ones that I would design myself to become? I would put a structure which is strong as a human body. I would put a mind which has values and principles. And then I would put a practice which could be credible and with passion. So he used to say that every young architect must first design himself as a structure, and then look back after 50 years and see if that structure has withstood the weatherings of the life. When he looked back, the buildings that he has designed are mere vehicles which aided him in his journey of self-discovery. He believed that we all are one because we shared binding values. We are different because we each have our own personalities and our sense of destiny. But again, we share optimistic hopes and expectations of a utopic society. If we all are asked to paint a picture of the paradise, I'm sure all of us would imagine the same and paint it the same, but in different colors and hues, because we all have certain binding values within all of us. So, friends, through the medium of these notes and with great expectations, he wanted to share the legacy with future generations. He believed great expectations drive the realization called architecture. He believed great expectations drive our spiritual search. He believed great expectations ignite our passions and drive us to work hard. Somewhere within his search is what called architecture and its dwellings. Architecture hides within a spiritual path what he called life. Friends, this book is very easy read. There are 300 pages. It took me 15 hours to finish this. Roughly, if I have to do the arithmetic rightly, it takes 3 minutes for a page. Either you could take a weekend and say that this doesn't belong to my boyfriend or my wife or my family. You could finish it over a weekend. Or you can make it as a habit and then read for an hour every day and finish it over a fortnight. The choice is yours, but do buy the book over here. CEPT generously needs the funds for this book. They have invested. Mirroring this spiritual path, this book is divided into 4 sections. If I have to elaborate what the book contains, each dedicated to architect at a very specific point of his life and practice. The architect in making, that's the first section, must learn essential skills and important values. These young students, on the threshold of stepping into the real world, must learn the difference between the good and the bad. Of course, when I'm talking about the good and the bad, we are talking about the good and the bad design. On the other hand, the second section, which talks about the architect in the studio, which is the practice, must know the ins and outs of the design process and display an integrity in working with their clients. After long years of practice, the third section talks about the architect in the labyrinth. Withdraws from the practice, is in his mental realm, and reflects upon their practice, the understanding of the parallels, and the establishing of his paradigms. Finally, the architect in the history, who's no longer alive, like Christopher, but still immortal in their buildings, inspires and shapes the architect in the making again, thus completing the entire circle with great expectations. He says, and I quote, "I was always a traveler and not a tourist." He further extends his statement and he says, "India turned me inside out and upside down. I had been made into a man by India." What a beautiful quote, truly. Now, friends, let me conclude this speech of mine on the book and a little bit about him by telling you 2 different stories. The first story happens in Mizoram. As you know, Mizoram is a state in the northeast of India bordering Burma. Once he was up there, young man. Sometimes I don't know to believe his stories or not. I'm sure like most of you also felt that way. He's a very good storyteller, and each of his stories have a lot of meaning and they carry a lot of heaviness, when you listen to them. He says that I stumbled upon an aged sign, not a normal sign, aged sign. That means that sign must have been there for decades, I guess, which read, "You have come so far to visit us. Leave something good or bad. इतना दूर आए हो, कुछ तो छोड़ के जाओ." With great expectations, this book is my attempt to do the same. What a beautiful way to put it together, isn't it? The second story happens in Banaras, Varanasi. This was in the early 70s. As you know, he was a traveler. So he went to Varanasi with one of his colleagues or friends back in those days in the early 70s, and they were rowing in a boat. As you know that you can go into, the same boats even exist today, and he was on one of the ghats and he went in the boat And they were obviously talking a lot of high-end Ivy League kind of stuff. And then the poor boatman is just oaring the boat, listening to these guys in his little understanding of English, because they all pick up English because they are so used to tourists, right? And he says like nonsense. And he says, history is continuous. This is what the boatman says in his broken Hindi or English. That's what is written in the book. And Christopher says, I felt a chill run down my spine and across my skin, momentarily leaving goosebumps all over my body. He had revealed a truth which, unknown to me, I spent my life chasing. He had revealed to me something that I would have only understood years later. The spirit of a piece of architecture is the spirit of continuity. Each work is an answer to all the preceding works. Each contains with it all of the previous experiences of the world of architecture. What is called a masterpiece lies on the cusp between the past and the future. It gathers up all of the lessons we are endowed with and generates a new legacy for the future generations. What a beautiful way to summate this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bhatt.
Christopher has been a mentor and a guide and a teacher and a friend to many of us. And so this book essentially is his gift to us, to put it down on paper, to say these are his thoughts and these are what his expectations of us would be.
Christopher Charles Benninger was a great Indian architect, planner, and an academic. We were half a generation apart, yet because he embarked on architecture practice late in life, we ended up being fellow practitioners for over 3 decades. During that period, I was also president of CEPT University. Christopher was a big supporter of my work there. As I got to know him better, as professional colleague and a collaborator, I developed an immense respect for Christopher. He was a highly skilled architect, a principled professional, and a generous collaborator. But above all, he was my friend. Our deep friendship was based on shared values and commitments and an admiration for each other's work. He would always compliment me on my work, particularly as an urbanist.